The level of stress is so high nowadays. The expectations also in the personal level are very high, and the performance goals are very high, and the competition is quite high as well. If we are not taking care of our employee, of the corporate world, of the humans, then we are really close to not having very productive employee in our workplace. The level of productivity will definitely go down if we do not do anything to prevent any kind of mental serious issues. It's a burnout. We all know this word, and it might happen easily with all of us. Most of the times it really will come to our own individual way of manifestation of how we are going to manifest our burnout signals and symptoms. And until it happens, we don't really know for sure that this is actually what is going on. Sadly speaking, but only from the experience, we can really figure out that, okay, right now it's already maybe too late, too burnt out, I'm too tired, I'm too stressed. I cannot really perform any longer. I cannot really do my job any longer.
Today we have a wonderful guest. It's Dr. Tatiana Ryklina, and she is an academic lecturer. She is a psychologist. She's also an executive coach and a mentor, and she's got over 20 years of experience in the field, working with companies, working as a psychologist with people. So welcome to this podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome, Tatiana. And today we're going to talk about very special topic, which probably everyone is familiar with, is mental health issues at workplace.
Thank you very much. I've been in the profession for more than 20 years, starting with a one-to-one counseling and growing into a coach, executive coach of big corporations. And nowadays I'm focusing more on academic career, teaching at universities in London, and having a group of students who I'm enjoying to educate.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us, Tatiana. So the first question, let's dive into this issue.
Yes.
The first question is mental health issues. They are on the rise, it seems. What do you think the main reasons for mental health issue being the part of the headline nowadays and increasing exponentially over the last 10, 20 years?
Well, I think there are a few reasons, as we can imagine. Always not only one. One of those, I would say that the society is much more open to be able to speak about mental health and what's going on with our inside experiences and what's happening with us in relation to ourselves in the relationship. And when society starts being much more open to speak about that, then people have more voices in society to present that, oh, actually, I'm only the one who experienced something. Therefore, the level of mental health awareness and the mental health issues become kind of bigger and mastered in the society, mainly because of the space that society is giving for that topic to be present. But of course, there are other reasons, like the level of stress is much more higher, as you can expect it nowadays compared to 100 years ago. And we are living in a very particular time as well. The context of where we are living, the world is quite polarized nowadays, and that's by itself evoke a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress within humans, within people. And of course, we bring this to our workplace, and we cannot really avoid not to be part of the society, not to be part of the context. So it's all kind of factors that would contribute to why mental health is such a topic nowadays. And we all kind of feel that they need to question what's going on with us, where we are, what's happening, how do we feel, etc.
You're saying it's not only workplace related. So it's a whole society-wide issue, but at workplace, this issue manifests itself in different ways. And that's why, and then people are more open to speak about it. So 10, 20 years ago, we would probably have similar issues, but, not many people would talk about it.
Absolutely. Yes, I would agree with that. I think the media allows us to speak more, and therefore we feel like it's more present. But actually, I think the level of stress and the mental health issues people had experienced were the same 50 years ago, but we just did not really spoke about them so openly.
So, Tatiana, obviously, you mentioned that the space for mental health is more available these days for anybody. Awareness is more of people about, how certain things could affect us mentally, our state, internal state. So, when we're looking at the workplace, and that's why I'm directing this question to you because you probably know this answer best. With this rise of awareness on one end, how much acceptance is there in the workplace to actually talk about struggles and talk about what it takes to maintain, your social, your work balance and everything else?
Well, my experience is that people start really introducing the policies of having mental health as a big part of their corporate world, of their corporate life, of the workplace. So it is there, but to some extent, people still don't really know how to manage these policies and how to be familiar with them and how to implement them. So when I'm working with one-to-one of the clients, for example, wherever they're from the big corporation or just wherever they work in, they find it quite difficult still to be very open about what's going on with them with the workplace, or with their managers, or with their leaders. And there is always a fear that if I say something or if I present with a kind of difficulty there, how is it going to be perceived? Is it going to be affecting my job? Am I going to be accepted? Does it going to affect my position, my salary, etc., etc.? So we are some way, I think we are moving towards awareness. And as I said, plenty of workplaces introduce the policy of how it can be, or invite coaches to deal with that, or invite counselors to be, a help for the employees. But when it's come to individual perception, I think it's still quite a lot of stigma around that. To what extent I can be open and to what extent I'm going to be accepted. It is not going to affect negatively my work, my performance, my salary, my relationship with my boss, etc.
Yeah, so the social perception is still very strong. And from personal experience, I think also working with the clients that are struggling with certain mental load or mental health issues at work, it is still stigmatized a little bit, and it does evoke that fear that I may actually lose my position or lose my promotion, or, just my perception, we have all our reputation, my personal reputation will be damaged, especially as people are climbing higher and higher. I think the
Exactly.
higher you go, the more difficult it is to actually speak out and say, oh, I'm struggling.
Yes, I think an interesting quality, which we would call vulnerability in psychological perspective, the more higher you are in the position, the less you're able to show that you actually also can struggle. I think it goes kind of almost in proportional to each other. So the less a position you have, the easier for you to say, actually, I need some rest, or I feel like I need a little bit more time for myself, or I'm doing these things differently because of A, B, C, D. But the higher position you are, the less chances I think you have to actually be very honest with your team or with your colleagues or with yourself even, which perhaps the more sad, the more difficult part of all of that. It's relationship with yourself.
So the position of leaders, it seems very complex because they not only should take care of themselves, of their own stress, but also the stress level of the team. And given this stigma still persisting, what advice would you give to the leaders to address the issues with mental health at work?
Well, it is actually quite complicated question because, of course, a lot of leaders look at a job place as a place when, they perform and when they earn money and when they manage the team. And there's a lot going on there every day. So to some extent, many leaders would struggle even with the idea that there's an extra they need to take care of. But on the other hand, if you think about this, the most important part of any workplace is a human. So we really need to take care of our human parts, our employee, because if they are not well, it's going to definitely have an impact on the result of the performance of how the company exists. The best way, I think, for the leaders is really to be educated enough to understand the possibilities of what might happen and how things need to be addressed. So the education perhaps here is number one. And from what I understand, the coaches really are really serving a very good job because it's a plenty of workshops or training for the leaders just to make sure that they know and they're aware. And of course, the resources needs to be also in place. If there is something going on with my employee, where do we address it? How do we address it? Do I have enough communication skills to address it? Do I have enough understanding where or who I should invite to help this person, or what are the resources in places for my employee. It's always, in my experience, in the end of the day, come to the safety of our employee. If we go to the workplace, and we love it if we feel safe there. So the leaders really need to think behind wherever they are doing, whether their employee feels safe in the workplace. And the safety is not only about having a proper roof above your head and feel that you have hot tea, but it's actually also about clear boundaries, clear structure, clear understanding of what do I do, understanding of what is my role position, who is the person who is above me, what is the communication style. All the small things provide the safety for our employee. And the leaders here really there to think about, in order to maintain well-being, to maintain good mental health, not to get to the point when we have to sort out the problems, but prevent them. All the small things, like how do I provide safety for my people? What do I do? What do I place in their workplace? So the resources, the attitude, the boundaries, the clarity, all of these small things. And the men come up with the safety for the employee, and they feel like this is the place when I would like to go, when I would like to perform, when I would like to maybe actualize or achieve something in my life. We see that nowadays the people choose their work not only to earn money. It's become much more meaningful for them. We are looking for place where we can build relationship, meaningful relationship. So that's also a big part to think about for the leaders. It's not just money making process anymore. We spend there 1/3 of our life, right, in a workplace. We actually would like to love it, would like to go there and be proud of the place we go, would like to share with our family, what happened? We've done this, my boss said this, we've achieved that. We would like that to be a really big part of our lives. So how we feel in our workplace, it is also a leader's job to think about that and to provide that safety for their colleagues.
Yeah, so it's not just about KPIs and hitting some business target, but it's actually having time to think about wider issues, preventative measures. And nowadays, especially with the changing environment, the pressure on the leaders seems to be increasing, right?
Absolutely.
Do you see that from your work with your clients, do you see that leaders actually take the steps that you describe? Is there a positive tendency that you can share with us?
I think they are. In my experience, I've seen very big leaders, like really CEO of very big names in corporation, who started with themselves. They've started with attending personal therapy, being vulnerable, facing their own struggles, and then really as experience gave them the chance to look at the team and the corporate world a little bit differently. And it does happening. Well, I cannot speak for the whole world, of course, but what I've seen, it's been quite a positive change, in my opinion. And leaders understand the value of humans in their workplace nowadays. They do understand that. So sometimes there is lack of time or resources. And this is when I really think our profession can help. Somewhere in between, we can meet here and help leaders to be more aware, to give them the tools, to help them to be in touch with themselves in order to be in touch with the others. Maybe to give some communication ideas as well, because not everyone is trained to have a proper communication with their employees, somebody who understands you and not just ask you to perform. So a lot of small things can be done. And I think leaders are doing that, mainly because they understand where is the real priority nowadays. What is your experience? You also both have a coaching.
I wanted to share that. I do agree with you that most of the time now, with more awareness on a personal level, people are a bit more in touch with the fact that things outside work, for example, can affect people at work, because it's all about our mental state and about how we're showing up and how much resource we have to give, right? So we can't just give all the time. So if there's something going on outside work, it will inevitably impact you in work. And if you have a leader that is in touch with that mentality, in touch of his own, internal processes, they can very quickly spot that something is off and address that in a very appropriate manner. And especially if they have good relationships established at work, they can actually even sometimes help out in the situation in some way or another to unburden the person temporarily in order to allow them space to breathe. I do also see, though, that although with a lot of awareness about this, like you've mentioned, lack of resource can sometimes be very a big barrier, and a perception as well. So I find that a lot of HR see that as a massive investment. So they are almost shying away from it. They are pushing it back more and more. I will do that next year. That'll be our strategy for, 2028. But right now, nothing is much happening. So my question is, I guess to you, you've seen so many different examples of this. To anybody listening that they're choosing now not to incorporate at least small steps into supporting their humans at work, like you said, not just employees, the humans. How would this scenario look like for them if they were to push it back too long, not do anything at all right now? How does this scenario play out for them? Just to give them an example of, what does this world look like if they keep doing it, keep pushing it back and keep not addressing this?
Well, the level of stress is so high nowadays. Mainly, there's different reasons for that, but the expectations also, if it's in the personal level, are very high, and the performance goals are very high, and the competition is quite high as well. And we know the reducing of the workplaces as well happening and around the world. So it's a lot of pressure. And if we are not taking care of our employee, of the corporate world, of the humans, then we are really close to not having very productive employee in our workplace. The level of productivity will definitely go down if we do not do anything to prevent any kind of mental serious issues. So the easiest thing that might happen is a burnout. We all know this word, and it might happen easily with all of us. None of us are protected from that. We all once at least in life probably experience it. And of course there are some kind of common factors, but most of the times it really will come to our own individual way of manifestation of how we are going to manifest our burnout signals and symptoms. And until it happens, we don't really know for sure that this is actually what is going on. So sadly speaking, but only from the experience, we can really figure out that, okay, right now it's already maybe too late. I'm too burnt out. I'm too tired. I'm too stressed. I cannot really perform any longer. I cannot really do my job any longer very well. It's too stretchy. It's to the extreme. But it's not the only problem, to be honest. The people struggling with the anger issues, which really something you don't want to see in your workplace, right? People struggling with the depressive issues, which also might be very hidden for a very long time, because people in depression can actually perform for a very long time very well and then collapse in 1 second. So there are a lot of things that we can ignore by not really placing the awareness and the help and the preventative methodology there. And eventually we will be the one as leaders who will sacrifice in the end and suffer from that, because we will not have healthy people who are enjoying work, and as a result our corporation or our business is going very well.
Yeah, and to that point, you earlier mentioned about preventative measures, right? It's always probably easier to prevent a problem than deal with the consequences. Do you see that maybe some countries or some industries having more success than others, and we can learn from those success stories from
Absolutely.
preventing this mental health issues?
I do, actually. Thank you for the question. I think it's very important. I've been, in my experience, working in Microsoft at some point in my life, maybe about 10, 15 years, 12 years ago, just in a one small project. But it really impressed me, because what the Microsoft implemented at that time is a real focus on workplace and how it's organized. And that was part of the mental health awareness. In a simple way, they've removed all the tables from their workplace and organized like a sofas where people can really sit down and have chat and still do the work, still on their computers. Of course, it's IT company, but do it very differently. So the atmosphere in the office became different. And that's really a very, very small change. If you think about that, it doesn't really require a lot of resources or a lot of money to invest. but they've thought about how things might be different for our employees so they feel more comfortable. I think I've seen the same on Google Office, I've seen the same on Facebook Office. They really changed the policy of how the workplace is established. And then by itself become a preventative method for their mental health. It's not the only one, of course. We as a human always exist within our bodies, and we need to remember that. So every company that take care of the physical part of their employees does the same. It's also a prevention of any mental health issues. It's a take care of our well-being. If we give our employee the gym pass or free pass or dedicate time during the day in a workplace to 1 hour of yoga, all of these small things, which actually exist nowadays in a big corporation, luckily people can enjoy them and can use them. All these small places, all these small things is a prevention of potential big issues. I'm sure more of them existed, but just with this one, I've seen with my own eyes, and I was very impressed how they actually work.
Yeah, with the tech industry, so they're at the forefront of many
Yes, I
things,
think
and including
it's really doing much better than any other industry.
That's reassuring. And I personally worked with many Microsoft employees as a coach, and it's really good news because my experience was that mainly companies provide coaching services to leaders rather than to middle management or professionals, whereas Microsoft is doing wider coverage by coaching.
Definitely, yeah.
Yet, what I noticed, not necessarily with Microsoft, but other companies, there is no stigma with working with coaches anymore, and it seems like a good thing to do is you're investing in your professional development. Yet there is a still stigma of working with a therapist.
Absolutely. Sadly.
Sadly, yeah. So for example, if I'm a manager or leader, a CEO of a company, and I work with a therapist, what would you see as the best course of action? Like, should I share that I work with a therapist with my employees and kind of show them my vulnerability, or should I actually not mention it because I have to be that, example of resilience that, I'm the captain of the ship and you can rely on me. So what are your thoughts on this matter?
Of course, I truly believe that being vulnerable and being honest is a good way of building a relationship with your employee. And if you go into therapy, it does not really mean that something is wrong with you necessarily. You might go because you want to be more resilient, or you might go because you want to, have space to think about how to build relationship with your employee. It's not necessarily a negative part of you that needs to be present in therapy. But I understand why people still think very in a stigmatization way around that. Coaching is something that we can easily share, and therapy or psychology, not really yet. However, if leaders would be and good examples for their employee that actually that's okay to go to therapy. Actually, it's extremely beneficial. Actually, it works for my support. Actually, it's a preventative as well for the potential difficulty. Actually, it's something that maybe many of us, or if you would like to attend, that's fine. That's going to be very accepted and it's very good experience. And you can try, we can talk about this and share. That I think would be much more healthy in a genuine way. I do not think that, well, of course, I cannot get into the head of everybody, but I would like to think that people would take it as not as a weakness, but oppositely, as something, you are able to be in touch with yourself, not necessarily the weak part. Maybe it's actually the brilliant and the very resilient part and very strong part. And therapy is a space for that as well.
Yeah, so working with having a therapy session, for example, may improve your resilience over long term, but stigma is still there, and it's I guess it's shifting the mindset for the leaders that I'm a still human being, not just a
Absolutely.
title.
Yeah, I need to say here that because of this stigma around, a lot of coaches nowadays start having their second profession as a therapist. People get more and more educated because they feel not that coaching is lacking something or not enough, but they feel that they're like psychological coach, for example, or therapeutic coach, then they would be much more accepted in society, but they still can do a little bit of therapy. So we also kind of, I think within profession, we are moving there because of the being more accessible, being more available for the big leaders who are still finding it difficult to share that I have therapies. But maybe if they share I have therapeutic coach, which actually is therapist in the big picture, it's much more acceptable.
It's like a proxy, isn't it? So we
Yes.
go to coaching and then we go to therapeutic coach and then maybe eventually we'll arrive to therapy.
Exactly. So we are also a little bit, I think, in the field, we're a bit playing with the names a little bit so to fit what society is expected here. Yeah. In the end of the day, it's still what really matters. It's what's happening in between coach and the client, therapist and the client, psychologist and the client. What makes difference, right? But just for a bigger picture, we are also moving towards, for example, I am myself. I have a few qualifications and I can name myself differently, but it's still me in the end of the day, the same person in front of my client, right? I'm not different. I'm still the same.
Tatiana, talking of mental health, talking of burnout, and obviously how the society perceives that brings question to me about cultural differences, working with the multicultural teams and bringing this topic to potentially somebody from the culture that doesn't really accept mental health. Maybe they don't see it as something that needs to be addressed, or they just purely shy away from even talking about this. How would you advise for the leaders that are trying to introduce this sort of healthy mental health approaches and potentially feel some sort of maybe resistance from the team members that may not be as aware of that due to their cultural origins? What advice would you give?
So again, I think the education of leaders here are the primary focus. Our job is not to educate leaders to know something and to apply it's exactly the same to everybody. Our job here is to make sure that the leaders takes individual approach as well and kind of look at the employee and their people from the individual perspective. We don't have to inform everybody that, if you feel level of stress, take a rest. That wouldn't be good enough because people feel level of stress very differently. What we need to educate leaders and what we need to kind of make aware the workplaces is that we look at things individually and we teach them and they try to kind of incorporate the idea that we need to ask right questions. Not necessarily we need to have a big, stigma of mental health, take care of that. As you said, for somebody, it would not make any sense. What is this mental health? How do I take care of that? What it is about? But if you really ask very direct question, how do you feel after work? Do you feel tired? What's going on with you? Are you happy? Where are you? What do you need maybe to have boost of energy in the second part of the day? The small questions that is part of communication between leaders and their people. If we build that kind of strength, if we teach leaders how to look at people individually from their needs, from their perspective, then we don't need the big names, how we deal with the mental health. Then we will be able to look at what's going on with you and what do you need from company to help you to be at your best. And that would be the main question. And if leaders learn how to question it and how to organize their team so everyone is take care of each other to the possible extent, of course, it's a workplace still. But if there's going to be in their mind, then wherever cultural background you have, you still have the experience. It doesn't matter how you call it. You still have understanding whether you have energy or you don't really have energy right now. Whether you have enthusiasm or you don't really. Whether you are happy to do this project, whether you're really interested or not really. Sleeping patterns, eating patterns are very physiological part of our behavior as well. And we all eat and we all sleep. And if we don't sleep enough or if we're anxious and that's why we don't sleep enough, again, we don't need to call it mental health. The question might be very simple, right? Have we slept enough today? Is it our 8, 7, 9 hours? How much do you need? It's very individual, but we just need to be a little bit more attuned to each other.
That's great. Thank you so much. This is what I take away is that it's almost like sometimes you need to almost strip down the labels. We all like to talk about mental health and everything else and just focus, like you said in the beginning, on a human. So focusing on a human and building the relationship, then you can reframe the same sort of mental health question into just a caring question from
Absolutely.
one person to another who spent, a good chunk of day every single day together.
Yes.
Yeah, and here, I guess the topic for leaders, and Anastasia, we discussed it with other guests as well, is about having emotional intelligence and soft skills for leaders in general terms, but also more specifically cultural awareness about neurodivergence, awareness about some other specific topics that maybe many people overlook, because what the main thing and one of the main reasons why we started this podcast is because leaders are so busy delivering things, but they don't always have time to pause and to be human for their own sake and for the sake of their employees and colleagues.
And that's, to be honest, very sad, because if you think about this, we only really need maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to address each other. We don't really need hours, and it's just if we prioritize this, and this we dedicate these 5, 10 minutes to each other a day. I mean, from leader's position to their team. We have a meeting when we talk about this little bit, and we ask maybe everyone, or maybe we ask everyone over a cup of coffee in the morning, what's going on? How are you? How was your day? What did you do yesterday? How do you feel? Is everything okay? It really will make a difference. People likes to be cared of, people likes when somebody think of them and take care of them. It's very simple. We are very human in a very primitive way, if I may say it, We really like when somebody asks us, what's going on? How are you? So doesn't need to be a lot of time, but it needs to be in the leader's mind that this is important, that this is what I'm doing. And if I spend this 10, 15 minutes in the morning and maybe another 15 minutes in the lunchtime, or maybe even not, depends on how big your team, of course, as well, then it might be enough. And that small by small, that will really help and build the relationship with the team and prevent potential burnout and open the space for the conversation if there is something to address or to bring or to present or to complain about, who knows.
And maybe a food for thought for UK specifically, for leaders, instead of talking about weather, maybe find out what person is doing, how he slept,
Yeah,
how
that
he's
would be
eating, right?
that would be real amazing advice. Real amazing advice. Yeah. I think we little bit, detached from each other, unfortunately, talking about common things. It's a cultural thing, and we need to accept this as well. But if we a little bit introduce after the question of the weather, a question of how are you, and that would be really good. But not formally, of course. I mean, seriously, how are you? Seriously.
Yes, on a
Yeah.
human level.
Yeah.
Have you seen, maybe you could share an example of a good leader who is really maybe caring, around whom employees feel safe and probably will have less of, mental health issues?
I actually can, and it might be not a surprise, but I've recently joined very good, very old established institute called Metanoia Institute as an academic lecturer, and the leader of our, how can I say it, like the whole faculty, very educated, of course, health professional, psychotherapist in the field, and he is the leader and he is doing his job not as a therapist for us, but as main manager, and the way he runs us and address things and always there to answer. And his answers and his communication style, it's so safe and acceptable that it's very easy to be around him. And all of us who are just new, who've just joined, or who've been there before, they speak very highly of him, mainly because of his very clear boundaries, but also very caring attitude towards all of us. So I have very good actual example of a leader who I feel I probably would like to work always, because it's such a pleasure to be with somebody who hear you, who listen to what you're able to say, who is not there to judge, but who is also there to provide some leadership for you if you need that. So there is a very clear picture that he knows more in many ways, but he's also able to give me the space for development, which I also like, for example, myself very much. I don't want too strict boundaries. I would like a space for development, for my own creativity, for my own input, which is important for me. And he does that for me as well. And I think this is a big part of his ability to be a leader.
This
is
is great. Well,
beautiful.
you brought up something that sort of resonated straight away with me. You said, as you were describing this, a fantastic human being and a leader, you mentioned feeling safe, and I think this is definitely something like a base of any relationship. It's the base of any leadership is to create this safe space where people can come to you if things go wrong. They can come to you when things go amazing as well. They don't shy away, and they can just open up. And I think any leader that is or potential somebody on the way to a leadership position who is listening, I think there's definitely these words of yours should be taken very seriously as to address creating a safe space for people that you were giving this opportunity to lead and to help them grow.
Absolutely. Yeah, I cannot agree more. Safety is really the baseline in many relationship, and in leadership relationship, probably the most important, because there is always a little bit of power game, of course, going on there. We cannot ignore that. But it's much more easier to be with somebody who is much more powerful than you if you feel safe around them.
Yeah. And I'm curious, you work with so many people on, mental health issues and other issues. Have you ever had like instances where you were taken aback or surprised when you were expecting something, but the reality was different and then it kind of hit you?
Absolutely. Yes, I was thinking about this as well a couple of days ago. Thinking about our podcast together. I was thinking about a recent client of mine who worked in London in a very big consultancy agency. And the amount of hours, the demanding of him present in workplace and his investment in workplace was absolutely unhuman in my opinion, and in his opinion as well. And we did struggle for the whole period of time to find this balance for him. And I think it was a real difficulty for him to stand out for himself because of the lot of expectations and maybe a new position, etc., etc. But a real struggle to stand down and say, I need to sleep sometimes. I cannot work so much in terms of the hours. I know this is what's expected, but that's not okay actually within any human and professional and even law in this country still. But it did look like nobody really did care. The results is the only thing that the company was all about. And I was quite shocked, to be honest. I did not expect almost the use of people in the workplace nowadays in London, which was a bit shocking. But luckily, we've managed to find a way to stand out and find a way to, take time and, go to gym and sleep and, kind of balance a little bit that. But that was a real difficulty. And wherever we would do psychologically, if the reality is that the results needs to be present in a particular day and a particular time, he couldn't really escape it, isn't it? And it's just the job that has to be done, needs to be done. And that was really difficult, extremely difficult. And I was shocked with the lack of attunement to the human needs and what's going on with the employee in that kind of condition.
Yeah, and to break that, it took work with you, and he had to say it out loud, I guess, right? Because you see, the theme also, another theme that is emerging here is it's not just a responsibility of an employer to provide safe environment, but it's also on us
Absolutely.
to let people know that we're not okay, where we have to also be self-aware.
Absolutely. And I think this is when my job really stand in for him is that, we have to work out where are you in all of this, why you are okay with what is actually not okay for you. How are you going to find a way to say, this is my boundary, this is what I cannot do more. How are you going to say it? Firstly, how are you going to recognize it, of course, because for a long time he couldn't recognize. And he finally recognized how now we're going to speak about that. So it's a step-by-step thing. And again, we're coming back to self-knowledge. If you don't know yourself, you're very easily ended up in a situation of being burned out, mainly because you don't know where is your limitations, how far you can go with the amount of work you can do. Especially among young people who are really ambitious and really would like to perform and maybe in the entry position, and it's so important for them and they've done so much before at university, at school to really get where they are. And I can understand that. And people sometimes overwork, and that to some extent might be okay if they're okay with that. But it's difficult to recognize where it's actually my limitation and where I have to stop and start taking care of myself.
Yeah, and also, bringing to reality, when you're young, you can easily not sleep through the night
Absolutely.
and still function. But unfortunately, to all of us that are over 30, this is no longer an option. So it becomes more and more prominent that we have to sort of take matters into our own hands. And you mentioned taking responsibility for yourself, not relying that employer is going to take care of you and your needs. But also, I think also important to create that safe space that we talked about. Not everybody has that at work. Not everybody has a leader that creates that safe space. And I feel that it's almost like we have to create it ourselves, create this sort of, something that we can fall back upon, thinking that it doesn't matter what happens. I can't do this. I can't deliver this in this amount of time. Let's say as an example, I feel okay with that. I don't feel anxious of what the response is going to be. Just be, build yourself up, so to speak, to be able to handle and contain that within yourself. That's also very important.
Absolutely. And that's difficult. It really is difficult because nobody teaches us how to do it. There is no subject or self-knowledge, for example, or self-awareness. People speak about that, but truly nobody really does it, isn't it? And even in schools or at
Yeah.
university, it's very small amount of time we dedicate to that. And if our profession is not within human to human, like coaches or psychologists, if, for example, we study finance whole life, or something, or medicine whole life, something else, like a subject, then we really don't have enough time to look at ourselves. But in the end of the day, we still come to the work within our own body, with ourselves, with everything we've been through, with everything we would like to, with all the ambition, with all the potentials, with all the credibility, etc. And we still have to deal with wherever we have. And that connection is what's missing a lot nowadays. And this when I think therapy is so useful, for example, because through therapy or through coaching, sometimes we get to know ourselves.
One thing that was spinning on my mind a little bit now, in your experience, what are the maybe what is one sign that everybody misses across the board? I know we all different. We experience burnout differently. Is there one thing that everybody misses, but that's a very good indication when you're sitting in front of the client to say, oh, actually, should we just look into that? Because that's sort of like a little red flag.
Well, I think maybe a few sleeping patterns are changing, definitely. And the emotional regulation. People, then they're burnout, they tend to be much less focused and much more irritable. Like there's some, like little bit of teenagers. We become a little bit of teenagers again. Everything is too quick. Everything is a bit annoying. Everything is not good enough. And that kind of attitude, it's really the sign of we are not okay. We are burned out. We are very stressed. We don't want this anymore. It can go other way around. People sometimes start being late to their job, or they feel like they don't want to do it anymore, or they're losing their interest. And it's not because the job stopped being interesting. It's because they're too tired. They're too burnt out. And it's just, I can't do it anymore. That's also a very big one.
But those signs are so easy to mix with other things, right? So one has to be very much in tune with his inner emotional condition. But for outsiders, I guess it would be impossible to know. I mean, my personal experience with a friend of ours, I didn't know. We communicated for 5 years, and I didn't know that my friend was going through a very bad burnout. But then it spiraled, and I found out only when situation got really, really bad.
Well, this is the problem. I think with any kind of mental health issue, what we need to think about is like this. For a very long time, when things started going wrong, our mental or emotional immune system kind of saves us for a very long time. It kind of keep it balanced, So for quite a while, we don't really feel. Then we start feeling, but we kind of ignore it. Then when start seeing things, we start explaining them to ourselves as something different, well, just a little bit, it's going to go away. I have headache or paracetamol, good enough. So we don't see the line behind. We don't see that actually it started and being with you for quite a while. We start really seeing things when they're really bad. And that's very sad. But this is what's going on. So again, I'm going to come back again. The more we know ourselves, the easier for us to recognize something is going wrong. Because human psyche tend to, well, maybe ignore is a bad word here, but tend to miss things. We tend to explain things differently, dismiss ourselves, and almost not being in touch with ourselves, not being attuned. And this is the problem, because if we are attuned, if we know ourselves, then we are not missing the early signs of anything, not early burnout of anything. But in my experience, people usually tend to miss. They only wake up when it's really, really bad, when it's an anger outburst, for example, that leads to something very difficult at work, or when I cannot stand up from my bed anymore and I'm really so depressed that I don't want to open the curtains and the window. But that's really already serious. Like it's serious condition. We need to look at things much prior. So change in the mood regulation or sleeping patterns, or I'm not really focused very well, or I don't want to go to work, or I don't know, something is resistance within me, or I am anxious just a little bit. All the small things, it's signs of burnout.
Looking at busy schedules of leaders who could easily miss these signs, like you said, it could be just and explain, sort of like explain them away, so to speak. Oh, it's just because the end of the year is coming. So once January rolls in, everything is going to be better.
Yeah, just a busy period. Everyone says just a busy period.
Yeah.
But what does this really mean, busy period? What it is about?
Yeah, next week is going to be better. And that next week grows to another week and it just carries on. What is one thing that they could introduce right now that could potentially prevent from getting to that point of burnout?
Well, I really like the exercise of prioritization. Think if the leaders, everyone else as well, but leaders specifically, mainly because leaders have to do a lot of decision making during the day. And as we know, decision making by itself, it's a very stressful process. We don't really feel it, but our body does. And when we make a decision, we have like a hormonal round of release, right? So that goes also within us, quite unnoticeable by us, but it does happening. Knowing that, in my opinion, if a leader or any other person, but leader particular, is able to sit down for 5 minutes in the morning with coffee or wherever with tea and make a list of what is really important today, what is a bit less important, and I can postpone it maybe to the midday, and what I can do tomorrow or day after tomorrow or somebody else can do. And if you prioritize your tasks and your decision making within the day, make it sure that, what is more energy required, I do the first, what less energy required, I do later, and something else I can give away at all, then by itself will structure the day a bit more and give space for kind of easier floating of hormones because of the decision making within the day for leaders.
So it sounds like it's best to schedule the most intensive thing first thing in the morning, because obviously if we had a good night's sleep, if we're rested in any way at all, we're more capable of containing that hormonal shift, like you said. And then as the day goes by, allowing yourself for less and less difficult decision making, if possible.
Yeah. But I also think that by itself, just sit down and to think about this and make this plan, it takes 3 minutes, no, maximum 5. But that by itself will straight away organize our mind, our kind of set of how we're going to think, what we're going to do, what we're going to focus today at. And that gives us boundaries and safety and, calmness around that. And that small piece of kind of thoughtful moment gives us foundation, I would say, for the day. Maybe only for the day, but that's enough to take care of our system.
Yeah, this is a beautiful piece of advice. Thank you so much. And I would like to remain hopeful that, mental health issue situation will be addressed, will not be as pronounced as it is now, given that there is more awareness. There is less stigma, hopefully. There are more investment into coaching, people also investing in themselves. So hopefully, and I hope you also share my, positive view on this. I don't know, maybe.
No, absolutely. I think that's why we are all here today. We want to speak about this because we would like world to know. We would like leaders to know. We would like them to be aware of the possibilities and for them and for their employees.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you very much.
Well, I
So-
think we will wrap up our episode for today. We'll thank again Tatiana for her time, for her expertise, and the episode was full of hands-on advice and different perspectives. I think that you brought up a lot of topics that people either shy away of or not even seeing it in the right way. So we greatly appreciate that. I'm sure our listeners will greatly appreciate that too. We will be posting below, as always, some links just for the ease of connection to you with whomever listening and would like to maybe follow your work or get in touch with you and work with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tatiana.